Hello, welcome again to Conscious TV. My name is Ian McNay, and my guest today is Ian Wolstenholme. Hi Ian.
Hello.
And Ian's written a book called Emotional Hostage, Negotiate Your Freedom, which was recommended by somebody. I picked up the book, and I read the first 2 pages and I thought, Ian sounds like an interesting guy. So we've got along here to the Conscious TV studio in Battersea, and we're going to talk about your life and your work, and maybe a little discussion about what freedom means and how you live freedom in the world.
Okay.
So you were working many years ago as a design consultant.
That's right.
And then something happened, didn't it?
That's right. Yeah, there was no good reason for this to happen. But, I mean, the first instance was a girlfriend of mine was putting pressure on me, and I suddenly became aware of myself. And I was in bed and she was reading to me. And suddenly I saw myself from a different vantage point.
So she's reading Samuel Beckett to
That's
you,
right,
wasn't she?
Yeah, she was reading the play.
Yes.
And I identified with that and saw myself gradually hiding under the covers, afraid to come out, afraid to actually show myself. And I was watching this happen. And that was the first change for me. And then some months later, on a Saturday evening, we went up to Hampstead Heath, as we often did in the summer, a group of friends, and somebody was playing music on Parliament Hill, and we were sitting up there enjoying the evening, and suddenly the heavens opened. I had this extraordinary experience of I can only say space, a spatial nature, a spatial expansion, and chariots appeared, bearded figures appeared, angels appeared in the sky, and I could see that this was happening, yet at the same time I knew it wasn't happening. It was a very strange reality, and something inside of me changed from what I might say tunnel vision to 360-degree visibility.
Mm. So one thing that I picked up some notes from your website, when you were having the experience with your girlfriend at the time, reading Samuel Beckett,
Yeah.
you felt you were the actor and the audience at the same time.
Absolutely.
But talk more about how that felt.
Well, at the time, I wasn't really aware of the implications that I am now very much in touch with. And if I can only describe it in the language of now, which is I expanded into the realized space. Mm. And in the realized space, you're seeing reality. I use the word pre-reality in often because I'm seeing prior to reality. I'm seeing what is before meaning's applied.
Okay.
And that's the actual viewpoint of realized space, is that I am seeing and no knowledge exists. I see things without knowledge, without meaning, and then I see myself.
So you're seeing them without any interpretation.
Exactly, exactly. And I see Ian, or the many parts of Ian, and the part of Ian that was playing at that time was the insecure Ian who was afraid to actually reveal himself or to be who he was.
Because you did feel, Ian at that time felt a lot of anxiety, didn't he?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. He was riddled with anxiety, and clearly my girlfriend was putting pressure on me to show up, and I didn't know how to. And this was all playing out in front of my eyes. Mm. Yeah, I was the player as well as the seer and the audience. But I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, that period between let's say the reading in bed to being on Parliament Hill.
Yeah.
What was there a process happening during that time?
Well, I was becoming aware of Ian in a new way.
Okay. So there was like what we might call the observer or the witness. Would you say it was that? Yeah.
And I, because I had no teacher and no idea of what was happening, I had to almost invent my own language so that I could understand what it was. And I saw that observer and watcher don't do justice to the experience. That's why I use the word seer, because it's actually a participation. It's not watching like watching the TV.
Yeah, I understand.
I am seeing and participating, but before meaning. But I didn't understand what was happening. It was happening during that period. I was more aware of myself, but I still felt and thought that I was the anxiety or the parts.
Yes.
And then, after the show, it changed. And I was still confused. I still didn't know what was going on. I knew what had happened. I didn't know what it meant. And I then needed to find out.
So when you say it changed, how did it change?
Well, it was like since that moment, I've been stuck in the present.
Okay, you're stuck in the present.
Yeah. Yeah.
How does that feel like, being stuck in the present?
The essence of it is a fascination. That's the best word that I can use to describe it. It's like when you see the rover landing on the moon, on Mars, and the screen opens up, and there's just, a square metre of dirt, and you go, "Oh my God, how amazing!"
You're very alive when you talk about it. It's like you take something that, I think what you're saying, you think it's quite small in itself, and it just seems fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's like, I don't know that I'm choosing where my viewer lands. I used, in the beginning I thought I was choosing, but now I see, I don't even know if I'm choosing, what appears to me. But as it appears, whatever it is somehow reveals itself.
Okay, what responds when something is appearing? What responds?
It's a very good question. The response has to take place in my senses. So the human condition is responding because the seer isn't anything. It's got a tiny attitude that says, "What is this?" and then goes like that. But the response has to take place in the human being, because that's where all senses exist. But I would say it hasn't yet selected a part at the level of where my senses are not senses, but they're sensors. They're reading the information, and that's where the fascination is. It's like,
And how do you feel the fascination?
Well, it's the most difficult thing to describe. because we haven't got a good language. But it's a sensory experience that I recognise, and you could say it's a kind of tingling. It's got a sort of ripply, tinglingy, tinkly almost. There's no language for it, but I know you can feel it. The way the interaction I've had with you, you're used to this place. I recognise that in you. It's just like this. Nothing's happening. Is it captured in what, on video? I don't know. But right now, my senses are registering realised space and the fascination with you, just sitting here looking at you and seeing your genuineness and openness. It's like, hallelujah, this is what I love.
I know, I want to keep an element of story in here as well.
Please
We've
do,
got plenty of time.
Yeah, no, I need you to guide me.
Because I hurry today.
Yeah.
I know when the opening, let's say, awakening, whatever we call it, first happened, it was very difficult for you to find anyone that would authenticate what had happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you went to different teachers and you read books, but you felt what had happened to you wasn't actually described by anybody else.
Oh, absolutely.
Which must have been quite difficult in one way, I would guess.
Yeah.
It's quite alienating.
Yeah, no, if I could call it a struggle, but it was never depressing.
Yes.
And I just would accept that this must be something else, because all the time I could see Ian, I could see my personality or his personality, and my fascination was to play with that and just be with it and to language it. And I saw what was happening, and when other people, to start with, I did a psychology degree.
Right.
And discovered that wasn't any help. And then I read many masters and visited a few people, and there was no validation in what they said, because they were all talking about states that seemed radically different, because I still had a personality and I still wanted things. I'm capable of acting in self-interest even now, Check me out, don't just believe what I say. All of these things are there in me, as me. And it took me 25 years before I was willing to say that to myself. Actually, this is it. There's no other possible explanation. I have my personality, all of this humanness is still living, and yet I'm free. There's no doubt.
Yeah, no, it's almost like a dilemma, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like two opposites.
And it was so scary, because when I decided, well, I'm going to have to say this, and everybody else seemed to be saying, oh, you are in bliss for 24/7, or, you can't want things, you can't need things.
So just to put it a little bit in context, your journey, you went to India, you went to Pune and the ashram of, as he was then, Bhagwan Sri Rajneesh, later Osho, and you spent some time as a disciple there.
That's right, yeah.
And one thing that fascinated me in what you told me on the phone was that you got very sick there. You had diphtheria, which can be quite a serious disease. It's a disease of the heart, I think. And you were paralysed for several months, was it?
Yeah.
And you felt in bliss. You were in a hospital in India.
No, I didn't use the word bliss.
Okay. Tell me as it was.
Yeah, no, exactly. But I felt great.
Okay.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I mean, when I arrived in the ashram, I wanted to stay, but Osho was continuing to talk of enlightenment as if it was something other than my experience.
Right.
And so, again, the conflict was there for me. But the most beautiful thing that I heard him say was, when I first awakened, I started telling people about it and nobody wanted to know. And so I started adding sugar, and when I added sugar, people really wanted to listen to me. And the more sugar that I added, the more people were interested. And so I'm happy to do that. And that for me was fascinating, because that led me to realise that maybe he wasn't conveying the reality. He was talking in terms that people needed to hear to bring them to the place that they wanted to be.
He was dressing the starkness or the whatever it is up to make it more accessible, palatable.
And he was able and skillful to do that. And then, after a year or so in the ashram, I got diphtheria, and I didn't know what it was to begin with. Nobody knew what was going on. Just one day I couldn't get up out of the chair after lunch. And then they diagnosed it as diphtheria and said, oh, well, there's nothing we can do. You either die or you don't.
How was it when you first heard that?
It was really cool. It was like, that's the extraordinary thing. It's like, oh, that'll be interesting. Let's see what happens. And I just lost mobility, and then I lost... the first thing I saw is I looked up at the moon, and there were 2 moons in the sky. I thought, oh my God, what's that? And my eyes were gradually getting paralysed.
Gosh.
And so I lost vision. I could see just a blur of colour. I couldn't see anything, any form. And then I couldn't speak. I could just make noises, and I couldn't walk. And amazingly, I was in the ashram hospital, so I was looked after beautifully. The woman running the hospital would come and lay beside me and cuddle me for half an hour, and it was just the most beautiful time. And I just spent my whole few months, feeling totally fascinated by what was appearing to me. And that time was spent in just seeing what goes on inside. That was like the beginning of my voyage into languaging the personality and Ian. And
so you explored the inner.
Yeah, there was nothing else to do.
God, whatever, had given you the space to do that, and you somewhere very intelligently took that opportunity.
But it wasn't even a choice. I didn't work it out. It was just what was happening. And it's...
So when you explored the inner, what did you find? Do you remember?
Well, it was the beginning of languaging it, as I have done in more recent times, as I exist, or Ian exists, as many different parts. And at one time, one part is active in me, and it's like the parts are little independent behavioural cells that have got their own little scripts. And those scripts have got directives for every system in my body. So if that part gets into the director's chair, or whatever you call it...
it takes over,
Then that part does what it does, and the world feeds back that everything in that part is true. That's the extraordinary reality of it. And yet, 5 minutes later, I'm in another part with a totally different set of attitudes, and the same is true. That feels like, oh my God.
So give me example of different parts, so people can relate to this.
Okay. it's more difficult for me now because I'm not very active in that area.
Okay.
But the fascinating work that I'm doing, particularly with couples at the moment, is setting them together, because I can describe what their parts look like. Sit them together, and we stretch time so that we can see everything that goes on in 30 seconds. And the last thing that we worked on, about 6 different parts kicked in 30 seconds. And so one person said, "Oh, I really want to be with you," and then you felt a change in the woman, and something reacted in her, and another part came in, and she was verbalising this, saying, "Well, what about this? You did that. How can that be true?" And this dialogue of parts goes on inside everybody all the time, and nobody notices it because all of your parts feel like you. All of my parts felt like me.
So what you're saying is the parts feel like one cohesive body, and yet they're almost individual entities.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Independent little behavioural cells that will fight to the death to enact their script. That's their job. And it's all the different behaviour that goes on inside, where somebody says something to you and the common idea is, "Oh, I took it personally," and made it mean something else. And so another bit came in that was resentful.
So it's all those experiences and that conditioning and everything, it's all locked away in there, one entangled mess in a way. And you were, when you were lying on the bed, that was the beginning of the process for you to see that it was individual parts.
Exactly.
Individual experiences.
Yeah. Although I hadn't actually languaged it to that extent then, but I was seeing it, and over time, how do you call, what do you call it?
Yes.
And so parts and scripts seem to be great, because it was like, I'm a whole cast of characters. There isn't an Ian, and everybody knows that. They've heard that spiritually so often, there's no Ian. But what does exist? What is me? I'm all of these things. And it's necessary to have them. You can't get rid of them, because that's how we exist, that's how we behave, that's how we act.
But you can understand them and recognise them.
Yeah. You can understand them, recognise them, and select something that isn't dysfunctional.
But who's doing that?
It's a good question. Well, I see that if you locate as a seer, then that's like being in the director's chair. It's like sitting in front of the various screens and choosing who gets to be on air.
But isn't that ultimately another part, maybe a superior part, but still a part?
I'd say it's a function.
A function,
yeah.
Okay.
And for me, it's like, as the life force enters the human condition, the seer appears. It's like it enters the seer, and then there's a kind of right management function, again, that isn't behaviour itself, but it has a sense of right and wrong.
It has values.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that would select the part rather than the personality, because the personality is like an autopilot.
A very confused autopilot, doesn't know where it's going.
No.
Okay.
No, that's the misunderstanding. It's a beautiful piece of equipment. It's not confused at all. It's doing its job beautifully, because it will always select a bit of behaviour to meet the situation now.
Okay.
But what it doesn't know is that bit of behaviour it's selected is dysfunctional.
Okay.
So the confusion isn't in the personality itself, it's just operating beautifully and will do it for the whole of your life if you don't, get conscious.
Okay.
But it has no way of understanding that the actual behaviour itself isn't meeting your needs.
Okay, to weave in again to the story.
Yeah.
You stayed in Pune till Bhagwan/Osho left.
Yeah, I left just before he did.
Okay. And then you got involved with another teacher called Barry Long. And
That's right,
we've never
yeah.
had anyone really come on to Conscious TV and talk about Barry Long. I know he's dead now, but
Yeah.
Just tell us, just relatively briefly how that was for you. Again, I think you went into that situation where you still didn't feel that you'd found this someone to guide you in terms of what actually happened to you. You were still working out very much on your own.
Yeah.
And so I guess part of the attraction with Barry Long was to continue that journey to try and find the confirmation. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. But I'd really had stopped talking about my own experience by that
Right.
time. I'd had no positive reaction really to the possibility that I might be awakened. So I completely took it out of my world, and I was just carrying on. And yeah, I came back to England and met Barry briefly, and we had a really good connection. And one of the people running his organisation was about to leave, and Barry asked me to work with him. I was living in California at the time, and I thought that was a great idea. I seized the opportunity because I really connected with him. He felt really genuine, and it was fascinating that he was working with man and woman and making love and all those things that appeared to be attractive to a relatively middle-aged man.
Okay, yeah. So, but you're with him for 10 years, that's a long time.
Yeah.
Well, what do you feel that you got? That's not a very good word, got, but what do you feel you learned or integrated during that time?
One part of it was like being a hatchling under his wing, where we didn't talk about my experience, apart from an occasional moment, every year or so. But energetically, we were very close. We spent an awful lot of time together, and I think that it helped. It was like a maturing process inside of me, whereas I could see Barry the man and how he really was, and then there was Barry, the tantric teacher of the West, how he appeared to be.
Yes.
And that was fascinating for me to see, that he actively kept in the background the fact that he was a man with feelings and needs. He felt that it wasn't appropriate to what he was doing to actually make that visible. And that's always a question for me, because that was the biggest part of my struggle, was that actually, oh, yeah, he's just like me. How great. How great, to see him doing really stupid things and things that he was caught out and a bit ashamed of, like everybody does. We all do silly things when we're not paying attention. And so it gave me first-hand understanding of what it was really like to be awake, realised, whatever you call it. And it included the fact that he was just another guy.
Okay, so what for you is being awake?
Well, it's my language it's the realised space. My primary viewpoint is from realised space, and I see that I am doing what I'm doing as I do it. Not before I do it, but as I do it. And as I say it, I don't know that this is what I'm going to say. I'm listening to it too. And I have this energetic quality which I recognise, and I don't know if it conveys to you. And it's so ordinary. That's the extraordinary thing about it, is that it doesn't make me into anything other than just an ordinary man. My life is unbelievably ordinary, yet completely fascinating.
Okay, so there's an existence, there's not even a you, there's existence in or expression of an awakened state, and there's also still running all these different, I forget the word, micro, something you use about parts of the personality.
Yeah.
They're all still running.
Yeah, little behavioural cells.
Now, do you find them changing?
Not so much.
Okay.
No. What I found is it was much less work to re-script a fairly blank part than to try and change a part that was already well...
Okay, you're re-scripting a blank part.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me more about that.
Well, first of all, I thought I could get rid of the parts.
Yes, I think a lot of us feel
Exactly,
that, yeah.
Exactly, you know, that was like common. So I attempted to get rid of them and saw that actually it didn't work. I didn't get rid of them. They were still there. And I realised that just like my nose is always there, you know, that little bit of behaviour exists in me, and I can't edit it, I can't take it out.
Okay, now, but surely by being aware of it and knowing about it, especially the more grosser aspects, a refinement is going to take place, isn't it?
Yes, I could say that there are two aspects to it. Something like the charge in that part is one aspect. There's the behaviour and there's the charge which drives it.
Yes.
You can ground the charge in the part so that it's not firing too often when it's inappropriate.
Yes, so the excesses are pruned, if you like, controlled, because they're inappropriate anymore. But what you're saying, the core is always there.
But I need to say something here.
Yeah.
Like, probably the greatest discovery was that none of my parts are bad. They all arise from genuine needs that I have. The only bad stuff in there is the behaviour.
But surely, just playing devil's advocate for a moment, surely the needs may be completely inappropriate now because their origin is a need when you were very young, 2, 3, 4 years old, whatever.
Yeah.
And that need is...
But it doesn't make the part bad, you see, in order to understand that.
I understand,
It's a genuine need that part has.
Okay.
But the behaviour doesn't get the need met, so why would you use that behaviour if you have the choice to use something else?
Yes.
So that's where I saw, if you like, change, but it isn't change by rewriting that script. It's change by using another bit of behaviour.
Which you talked about as blank space. You take the blank space.
Yeah.
So you're saying that you then... Are you designing behaviour to fit a new... How does that work?
Well, it works creatively. You know, if something isn't working for you, how would you like to meet that situation?
Okay. No, I understand that,
You know, God, that didn't work very well, you know. Shit, what can I do?
So you'd really bring the word intelligence in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, intelligence, creativity, what do you need? And how can we get it? And the simple process in that is learning to ask for what you need, learning to recognise, actually, this is what I need right now. Can you give it to me?
So how does this, I'm very aware there's a whole movement, there's this film, The Secret, about manifestation.
Yeah.
How, and I suspect what you're talking about is very different from that,
Yeah,
but,
it is.
but how is it different?
Mine's about behaviour, how you actually act, and it's like coming from your needs. What is it that you want in a situation? Examining that, seeing that that argument just didn't get me anywhere. What do I want in this situation? And seeing, oh, that's what I want, and then how do I get it? But it all comes from seeing what you want and daring to say to your friends and lovers, and this is what I need, this is what I want. Can you give it to me?
But you see, where I'm still not getting it clear is if you have the realisation and you're living the realisation of, I forget the term you use, I would use ground of being.
Yeah, realise space.
Realise space.
Yeah.
Then there isn't really a strong I there, or any kind of I there, that wants things in a certain way. So it seems that there's...
Yeah, but no, the needs aren't in realised space. The needs are in the human condition.
Okay, all right, okay.
And that's necessary to live this life.
Yeah,
Just like the Mars rover, you need the little pod to see what the surface is like. We need our host creature, and the needs are in the creature, and as far as I'm concerned, they're okay. It's okay. It's okay to be the creature and to have the needs and to have emotions. That gives the colour to my palette and my painting.
It's a bit like taking care of your body. You take care of your mind
This
as
is
well.
such a good idea.
Yeah.
Yesterday morning I had the idea that it was like, I have custody of me. And I say that because it's like the attitudes are valuable in identifying what's going on. The attitude of the seer towards the past, towards the personality, is rather like adopting a child or adopting a family. And when people say, "Oh, I'm not Ian. Ian died," it's that's not good enough for me. That doesn't bring into play the fullness of the human being that I am, as well as being awake. And so there is an attitude of acceptance of all the parts that I am.
Yeah, I'm just looking at my notes, which I made from your book, and you talk about expansion of your consciousness allows you to see your whole reality, which we've covered. You're alive in 4 domains of experiencing.
Yeah.
And your 4 domains are body, thought, emotion, which you include feelings and emotion, I guess, and awareness, which would be the ground of being there. So I guess it's all very logical. You're taking care of your body, you're being intelligent with your thoughts, your awareness is helping you with emotions to see what's appropriate and not appropriate, and the feelings of what's appropriate in different situations.
Absolutely right.
Yeah. So it's really, what's interesting for me is that you had this awakening, this realisation many, many years ago, and I think you also talk about somewhere in the book that it's an element of grace in that, because that's not guaranteed it's going to happen to anybody. It doesn't matter how much work you do, nothing's guaranteed. There's always an element of grace there.
Exactly.
And then that happened, even without the work, it happened because you weren't very, very conscious of what you were capable of in that level at that time. So that happened, And then there's a whole long process of understanding the mind. You hold the realization is held of who you truly are, and there's a refinement of your vehicle in a way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. You know, and that's my fascination. And I can't stop it, as it were, you know, and I don't want to, because it's like it's continually being filled out, both within myself and within my friends and the people that come and talk with me and meet with me, and that join the experiment, as it were.
So the experiment is ongoing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ongoing and unknown, as it were. You know, it's like we're charting the territory and languaging the territory in a way that isn't common, and yet it appears to be incredibly useful to the people that see themselves in that way.
Yeah, the previous programme we just made before you came along was built around the panel about consciousness is evolving. Is that something you connect with? There's that evolving in the whole element of the potential of consciousness and the human potential within that?
Well, language is really important to me, and I would say that consciousness doesn't evolve.
Okay.
I'd say that consciousness is, evolution happens in the human condition.
But isn't the human condition also consciousness?
Yes, but it's like it's possible to see, you know, like my diagram of the domains of experiencing, it's possible to stretch them out and see where expansion, evolution takes place, and it doesn't take place in consciousness, because there's nothing in consciousness to evolve.
So consciousness just is.
Exactly.
But I'm still not understanding how the human realm can be separate from consciousness.
It's not separate from it, but it's
Okay.
it's a domain within consciousness.
Right.
It's like the human condition isn't the whole of consciousness.
No, I understand that. I appreciate that, yeah.
And so that's just what that means to me. I'm not saying that evolution isn't happening, but it, you know, like my seeing that there are no levels in consciousness either. You know, the levels exist in the human condition, in man's mind to help him understand. But consciousness, there's no levels.
The fascinating thing about when you talk is, and again I pulled this out of the book, a quote, it's very short, I am awake but still a person.
Yeah.
And that's what we don't find always with people that come on Conscious TV. There's awakeness, they are the ground of being. Well, we're all the ground of being at one level. Well, you said there's no levels, but anyway, at one level.
Yeah.
They're the ground of
But
being.
we have to, I accept it in language, but...
Yeah. And yet you're bringing in and say, I am awake, but I'm still a person.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I find quite refreshing, actually.
Thank you. Because it's real.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm here to have this life.
Yes.
I'm here to have my emotions.
So you're in a way you're enlightened, but you're also running the human adventure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the fascination.
Yeah. So we have about 7 or 8 minutes left. I think what I'd like to know a little bit more about is your work. I think you do individual sessions, sometimes workshops. How that works now, you know, as we were saying, you were kind of almost given the grace of God or whatever. You were given this awakening. Most of us are not given the awakening. It happens at various stages in different ways after a lot of work. So for somebody that is coming along, watching this on TV or coming along to see you, what is the foundations they can lay?
I really don't know.
Okay.
The way that I work is so radically different with different people. You know, I don't have a plan. I mean, I have my languaging of what it is to be a human being, but I meet the people, and then I seem to have a sense of what's going on in them. And I don't know how that takes place. I don't know how that happens. I'm not psychic or anything. But we explore. Mostly people come to me because, you know, they have some sort of trouble in their life, mostly in their relationship, and mostly in their communication. So we often focus on that. But it is about guidance. I want to guide you to the seeing of yourself. I don't want to tell you how to behave. I want you to see for yourself and verify what's going on in you. And then together we might be able to find out how to actually start bringing the, you know, new parts in, or whatever it is that you want.
So it's almost to start with looking at a map of the mind, seeing what's there.
Yeah, seeing how people behave, where they get triggered. And sometimes, I mean, I'm not aware of working this out. I don't really know how it happens. You know, I'm not sitting here looking at you and seeing anything. And that's how I meet people. And yet, things come up very easily and very quickly. And what I do seem to notice is that people fall into a state of awareness when they sit with me. And people often say that. And yet I don't know how that happens. It's not something that I'm doing consciously, but I've noticed it enough now to recognize that when people sit with me, it appears to be a lot easier for them to see what's going on inside of themselves. And there's this idea of me holding the space to do that. But I'm not, I don't really know what that means.
I think it's also probably a commitment from the person to take the time to do that.
Oh, that's absolutely necessary.
We're so busy in the world, aren't we, running around? And,
exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like mapping our inner reality anew.
Yes.
And as I say, it's my total fascination.
Well, good. You're going to do a short meditation, which I guess will help this process to some extent. Anything else you want to say in the last 2 or 3 minutes? I've tried to draw out. We haven't met before today. I try to draw out the best I can, but I don't really know you very well.
No.
So, anything that we haven't covered that you feel is important?
We haven't really said much about it, but for me, it was like I wanted to show the ordinariness of what it's like to be self-realized. So many stories about it appear to make the person special or stand out from a crowd or give them extra powers or abilities, and none of that really is true. It's just the ability to see clearly, and I exist as me. I exist as Ian, and I do stupid things. I behave in silly ways sometimes. Nothing special about me. And I found that really helped a lot of people who actually have had a similar experience to me. The space has opened up in them, and yet, it took me 20 years in a way to sort out Ian. The work still had to happen.
Yeah.
I had to discover what was going on, and that's what I like to share. I like to share that, you personally have probably got a long list of conditions that need to be in place before you might say that you're awake. And I say, well, show me the evidence you're not awake. Show it to me.
Yeah, what I'm picking up from you is this kind of this feeling of relaxation, like you're encouraging me and people you sit with to relax and just chill out to where you are, and in that, an opening takes place automatically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Good. I really appreciate you coming along to
Thank
Conscious
you.
TV. It's been a very interesting, quite different conversation. You're going to do this short meditation for people watching on the internet. There'll be a short meditation from Ian now. I'm going to again mention his book, Emotional Hostility. It's only a thin book, but it's very worth getting reading this book. And thank you once again for watching Conscious TV. And I hope to see you again soon. Goodbye.
Welcome to the Seer Meditation. I'm Ian Wolstenholme. I'm going to guide you through this simple meditation process. There are no rules to this meditation. So often the Western mind struggles with what happens when you try and meditate. And the Seer meditation allows you to be however you are, allows whatever happens to happen while you're sitting with me. And so find yourself somewhere comfortable to sit. Close your eyes. Be aware of your senses. Be aware of what you're feeling. Allow yourself to think whatever it is that you're thinking. But see yourself thinking the thoughts. See yourself feeling the feelings. Allow everything to be as it is. You don't have to change anything to do this meditation. Just allow yourself to be. Allow yourself to feel your body, to feel the surface of your body. Be aware of how it is. There's no way it should be. There's only how it is. Same with your thoughts. See what's happening. Allow it. Now I'm going to play my dome drum. Just let the sounds into your body. Allow yourself to feel them. See if you can identify where you feel the sounds from the drum.